Thursday, June 26th. I'm Jim Csek with NowMedia. Headlines today. Where will all the money come from? Lots of talk on resource extraction, and a big but. More light being shed on that BC Ferry deal, and it doesn't look good. Nvidia takes top spot as the market leader for market cap. Everybody wants energy. Where's it all going to come from? All that and a lot more on the Really Big Show. We got lots of good stuff to talk about this morning. Like I said, I'm Jim Csek. With me, Iain Burns, our managing editor, all the way in the nation's capital. Beautiful day here in the Okanagan. Kind of slightly cloudy, a little bit of overcast there, but beautiful day nonetheless. And out there?
It's gloomy, and it was raining earlier. And it's cool. It's quite cool, sort of high teens.
There you go. Is Mark Carney back in the house yet, or is he just traveling the world still?
I don't think Mark Carney is a stay-at-home kind of guy, is he? He likes to go on his adventures.
The big DJT was home quickly. He doesn't stay out very late. Out very long. He's there and back quickly.
Yeah.
But where's all the money going to come from? And here's Mark Carney there. I think they were asked where the money's going to come from. We're just going to play this again.
Mr. Carney. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Previously, you've spoken about the idea that Canadians will need to make sacrifices to pay for defense spending. Can you outline what sacrifices you're expecting Canadians to make?
Well, I think right now the people who've been making sacrifices have been the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces because they have not been paid to reflect what we are asking them to do. They haven't been operating with the right equipment in many cases. Many cases, their equipment hasn't been working. So the first sacrifices have been there, and we're making up for that and level setting that. And that's an important part of just what we're doing this year in terms of the increase in defense. The second thing I'd say is that the way we're looking at this, and you'll hear more about this in the coming months, that the investments we're making in defense and security, broader security, given the new threats that Canada faces, I think those, we're not at a trade-off. We're not at sacrifices in order to do those. These will be net additive. In other words, more of this will happen in Canada. More of it will help build our economy at the same time as it improves our defense, and we'll get the benefits. The question is, as we move towards later in this decade, and depending on how the threat environment evolves globally, if we are moving to the higher and higher levels of defense spending because that's necessary, then we will have to make considerations about what less the federal government can do in certain cases and how we're going to pay for it. Those trade-offs, I'm going to give you false precision around this, but those trade-offs happen towards the end of the decade into the next decade, and we will be much, much better informed. And if I can go back to Steve Chase's question, the social license element of that, there's going to be a very clear and open conversation about that based on facts and based on what Canadians want.
What?
If that was a candidate for a job at Tim Hortons and you were the hiring manager, what are the chances you would hire that man? I'd just be like, what the hell? Do you speak English? Is English? What level of confidence do you have in English, would you say, Mr. Carney? He just doesn't speak English.
Well,
he doesn't speak our language. He speaks another language. It sounds like English. It's English words, but that's not English. That's not our language.
I would guess that he hired Kamala Harris as a speechwriter because those are word salads. But even more so, they're even worse than word salads because they're just like, I'm going to give you false precision. Basically, you're going to lie. Is that what are you saying?
It comes across to me. Either he's stupid. I don't think that's true.
No.
Or he has contempt for the Canadian public. I think it has to be one of those options. I really don't think he's a stupid man. I don't think you could even get into Harvard, especially without a very rich dad. Never mind actually complete a degree at Harvard.
One of the
unless he
things,
had at least 100 IQ. So I don't think he's stupid.
yeah.
But why is he speaking like this? That it has to be like we have to have an answer to that, I think.
And one thing for sure, though, he said that the Canadian military has been making the sacrifices. That is absolutely true. We pay them almost minimum wage when they start out. Well, we pay the bureaucrats in the same Department of Defense, triple the salaries. We give them equipment that is decades old. We're flying fighter jets that are 40 years old. We got submarines that are diesel, and I think only one of the 4 works. So, I mean, that's bang on, and they have been making sacrifices, but what has been done in the last 10 years and what is really going to get done right now? So he does say, and this is the Holly Dome Blacklock saying, no new sacrifice expected of taxpayers under this increase. They go from $34 billion to a target in 2035 of $200 billion. Now, obviously, that money's got to come from somewhere. And, yeah. And
I don't know where they've got those numbers from. Obviously, that it's based on what the GDP is in 2035. Nobody knows what the GDP is going to be in 2035. So I don't know why Blacklocks, which are usually quite smart, I don't know why they've done that. Nobody knows what the GDP will be then.
Yeah, hopefully it's higher, but I don't know about that.
Yeah, but I would say, sorry, just to go back to his little speech there and talking about what a garbage mess, what a disgrace the military is. He's coming out with some really good attack lines against the Liberal Party, isn't he, Mark Carney? Yeah. But the way Mark Carney acts, it's like he's not even in the Liberal Party. He's like some sort of independent entity, isn't he? Like an independent godhead that's just descended from heaven. It's like he spent the first half of that little excerpt there just cutting the Liberal Party to pieces, just, really insulting and degrading the Liberal government over the last 10 years. But apparently he can do that as the leader of the Liberal Party. Good for him.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then the minister calls for wartime effort to build infrastructure. That's, so that's the question. Will it happen? That's Hodgson there. So,
wartime effort. Do you think in the Second World War that the French and the Polish and the British and all the rest of the people that were attacked by the Nazis, do you think that they were like, okay, let's build some tanks, guys? And then the first question was, okay, but what does this minority think of that? Will they give us the permission to build these tanks? And what does this province here in our country that's always at odds with what we do in central government, what do you think they're going to say? Actually, what about those people who think the world's going to end because it's going to get too hot in the next 50 years? Do you think they'll let us build tanks? This is the thing. If you want to speak English, learn English. Don't talk about wartime effort if you don't know what that actually means. Because obviously this isn't a wartime effort. If it was a wartime effort, every province would not have a veto. That's not a wartime effort. Can you imagine if Winston Churchill was like, right, we're going to fight the Nazis, lads, but Hampshire has a veto, and so does Yorkshire, and they've both said that they don't want Spitfires. So I guess we're not going to build Spitfires, but we're going to work towards building some aircraft to defend us. We're going to find one that we're going to go into consultation with people from Lancashire to make sure that they're okay with it, and then we're going to build some aircraft. Don't be stupid. Don't use language that makes you look stupid, Tim.
And here's Enbridge saying that it would pitch a new Alberta-BC pipeline under the right conditions. And those are the things, like under the right conditions. And this is what everybody's going to be scared of. If anybody's going to deploy capital, they're going to want to see those regulations and the hurdles being cleared first. Because why would they put in billions of dollars only to get what you just said? Somebody says, yeah, no. Like you've built it halfway and we're going to go with no. Right? So,
but it's interesting is because they also have a vested interest in not, because they push oil down into America, don't they? So they almost have an interest in that. But this is an interesting article for a change. I don't know who wrote this from Canadian Press, but it is actually quite a good article because they have that vested interest. So they need to be kind of persuaded of it. And then the other companies that might get involved, they're all like, for various reasons, they're not quite up to the task. So this is quite a pessimistic article, actually, but it's still quite interesting to read.
Yeah, Enbridge is Canada's biggest shipper of crude oil with a vast cross-border network. It's also the company behind the scrapped Northern Gateway oil sands pipeline to the BC port of Kitimat, south of Prince Rupert. There you go. It would take real provincial and federal legislative change around climate policy, regulatory timeliness, and Indigenous participation. I mean, there's that one sentence that you just said, all that other stuff you said, that's the hurdles, and there's a lot of them in that sentence.
Which is why, I mean, it might sound petty, I talk about language quite a lot, but don't talk about us being in a war, and don't talk about adopting a wartime approach, a wartime effort, if nothing has changed. It's still very much peacetime. It's still very much like there's no pressure. There's no pressure if you're going up to like various special interest groups and saying, "Is it okay, my lord? Could we build a little bit of pipe, please, Your Majesty?" It's like you're not at war if you're doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then it's the other major obstacle, and this is the major one for sure that hasn't been talked about a lot, even when we talk about the pipelines, is the federal government's tanker ban on the West Coast. Because I mean, there's not much point getting the oil to the West Coast if you can't bring tankers into there, right? During the pitch debate over the defunct project, First Nations environmental groups were vehemently opposed to crude oil tankers sailing along the rugged island-dotted northern BC coast and raised alarm over ecological damage that could result from a spill. And so, yeah, so Smith and industry players have been pushing Ottawa to lift that ban, but to date, there's no sign the Liberals would oblige. And that's, again, there's two bills that are in the way. The pipeline, Bill 669 and Bill C48, that doesn't allow tankers on the West Coast. So not much point in getting oil to the West Coast if there's nowhere to put it.
Completely. And then EB's also said, I think even just yesterday or this week, said he has no interest whatsoever in tankers off the northern BC coast. He's not interested in it. He doesn't want to do it. And obviously he's kind of beholden to environmental radicals and sort of urbanites in Vancouver and Victoria that don't like oil, even though they use it every day.
The Canadian Border Services Agency said it's handed deportation orders to 3 Iranian officials associated with the Iranian theocratic regime in the recent years, though only one of them actually has been removed from the country. Again, there you go. Here's your order to leave, and oh yeah. Revelation.
I think that was a good little Freudian slip there. Where he said theatric, because it is a theatric regime, isn't it? They do put on a show. Like just today, the theocratic leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, is coming out saying like, we destroyed the Zionist regime and all this kind of nonsense.
He came out of
it is actually, that is theater, isn't it?
He came out of his bunker to say, we won.
Am I safe now, or do we win?
Yeah, again, but
Good
CNN is likely running with that headline that Iran has been victorious over the United States.
I'm sure, and the people of Los Angeles and New York City cheer in the streets at the prospect. I would say about this CBSA thing, though, we were on about this with Pierre Poilievre, weren't we, when he was saying, they have to be deported. It's like, he said that as like a matter of course. Well, he didn't even say deported, did he? He just said they have to go, or something, or some sort of, a bit more of a less clear word. But it's like, how are you going to bring that about? What's your actual plan? Because this is what tends to happen. It goes to some judge who, kiboshes any attempt to get rid of them. And even then, like, Canada doesn't even track who leaves the country. And I remember having a chat with an RCMP officer, like off the record, who was just on about this guy that had just left, or is believed to have left Canada. And I was like, how is this possible? Like, there was a warrant out for this guy and he just left Canada, went to India or something. And he just says, yeah, that happens all the time. That's just kind of how it works. It's like, all right. So how are we supposed to actually get rid of people that shouldn't be in the country? We don't even monitor them, don't even know if they've gone.
We got some window washers outside the window here. They may make some noise for the next couple of seconds, but just ignore the banging. They're scaling the building, the 17 stories or 18 stories here. And then another one, the no evidence of foreign interference in federal elections, says the commissioner. They said there's no in that federal election in April. So there you go. Caroline Simard has said her office received more than 16,000 complaints about the election, 7 times the number logged in 21. But so far, no sign the outcome was affected in any way.
I guess that's a happy outcome for the entire foreign interference community, isn't it? Because foreign interference is pretty tragic when the wrong party wins. But if the right party wins and the right man becomes prime minister, I suppose, like, who cares anyway, really? They made the right decision.
And then where does a recycled politician go? Well, they come back. Former federal politician who once faked radio interview looks to re-enter politics. And he says, because, we need change. And there you go. Decades after making headlines, after faking a radio interview, driving under the influence and breaking federal lobbying rules, and former member of parliament says he's looking to throw his hat back in the political ring. He's not only should be running for mayor, he might be want to run for, the leader of one of the parties. It sounds like he's got the qualifications of a great politician here.
Well, certainly if breaking driving laws is anything to go by, he could be the next transport secretary. Christy Freeland likes to put a foot down now and then, doesn't she?
At a restaurant he runs near downtown Edmonton, Raheem Jaffer said Wednesday he plans to re-enter politics and he's going to run for mayor in the city of Edmonton, City of Champions. I don't know, they don't call it the City of Champions anymore, but yeah, he did some really weird stuff way back in there. He had somebody actually sit in for him on a radio interview and then said it, and then he insisted that it was him, but the aide eventually came clean. It's just like, what? Again, you can't make this stuff up, but hey, he's better now. He says all the skeletons are out of his closet. They're all been exposed. I'm assuming if there was a few of those skeletons in there's likely some more, but he says they're all exposed. So, there you go. Why not?
It's
right?
quite an interesting one. I mean, what is also interesting is apparently this is the first Muslim MP in the history of Canada.
Yeah, he immigrated
to
Canada when he was young to escape persecution in Uganda and was elected to the House of Commons in 97 under the Reform Party and eventually became the Conservative Party. And then the 25-year-old was the first Muslim elected to Parliament. But then, it fell off the rails, I guess, right? And he says, he says we all learn to do better, and that's fair enough. Fair enough. There you go.
But he was done for driving under the influence, and he's a Muslim. What was he under the influence of? Because obviously it's very much haram to take drugs or alcohol or anything like that if you're a Muslim. So maybe that's his greatest sin.
There you go. Daniel Smith is looking at replacing the RCMP as the main police service for all of Alberta, because the city of Calgary have its own police force, as does the city of Edmonton and that. But they're looking for...
I think even Lethbridge, they do as well, don't they?
We can play a little small piece of this clip here.
The Alberta Next panel is touring Alberta to hear from Albertans on how our province can better protect ourselves from Ottawa's economic attacks, while building a more prosperous, strong, and sovereign Alberta within Canada. A provincial referendum on some of these ideas is coming in 2026. But what's on that referendum ballot and what happens next for Alberta is up to you. One idea being discussed by the panel is creating an Alberta police service to take over community policing from the RCMP. Today, roughly 80% of Albertans are served by local municipal police services, such as the Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge City Police Services. However, Albertans living in most rural communities and a few mid-sized cities like Red Deer, Fort McMurray, and Airdrie are policed by the RCMP under Alberta's policing contract with Ottawa.
There you go. Even the city of Grand Prairie has its own police force. That's a smaller community. I know that Kelowna has been talking about it as well, and looking at getting its own police force. Obviously, I mean, it's a cost thing, and then more control. And then there's some other cities in British Columbia that we're looking at as well.
It's quite interesting. I mean, I think that would please Justin Trudeau. So that was one of the last things he said, wasn't it? I think it was possibly the last day of his time as Prime Minister. He said that he wanted to get RCMP out of community policing, didn't he? So I guess Ottawa would probably actually welcome this.
And then also likely Alberta is removing one more federal agency that's operating in their province.
Yeah, one more connection, I guess.
Yeah, But again, when there is like a city police force, the RCMP are still there. They just work at a different level. They usually work in like the major crimes and stuff like that. It's not like they leave.
Yeah.
They just don't do traffic.
Cross-border stuff.
Yeah, they don't do traffic enforcement and stuff like that.
But then that could lead to a different kind of a conflict almost, couldn't it? Where maybe there's an argument about who's in charge of a case, the RCMP or Alberta Police. That could be politicized, one could imagine, if it was if independence was on the agenda. And
then in some international, and this is done in the U.S., there's groups calling for the eviction moratorium amid raids. So like if you're a renter down there, they're calling for no evictions, and so that people can hide from ICE. So I'm going to play a little clip of this.
Tenants Union, along with some other major labor unions, are joining forces today demanding action to protect Angelenos against immigration raids. The local SEIU 721 labor union, along with Crew and the Tenants Union, are asking the LA City Council to pass an emergency protection to help families who may face eviction due to the immigration raids. The unions say many families may not be able to cover rent due to a family member who may have been taken by ICE, or who have family who may not be able to leave their homes due to fear of kidnapping. The groups claim Latinos make up majority of renters in the city of LA. They also say local residents have had enough to deal with, from COVID to the economic crisis and our deadly firestorm. Now the raids are creating unnecessary fear.
Nowadays, I mean, you don't know who's a cop, who's an ICE agent, not who's a bouncer.
Did they just say kidnapping as if that was like how to describe the democratically elected government removing people who are in the country illegally? That's kidnapping, according to who was that? ABC. These people have just completely lost their minds. They've completely lost their minds. What do you do? I just despair. I don't know how do you fix that?
I don't know the answer, and that's the federal agency. It's not a rogue agency that's kidnapping people. It is the federal agency, and it's what they ran on. They ran on that.
But kidnapping is a crime.
No.
You know, these people are there to enforce the law against crime, against criminals, people who've broken the law. But the truth is that, I mean, almost everybody that's been to America and had conversations with the sort of blue half of the brain, like, you know that they just don't care. They really don't care that there are people in America illegally. On a number of occasions that I've been in America, people have said to me, just come in illegally, just break the law, like just overstay your visa. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, inviting people to break the law and stay in their country. It's not an issue for a lot of Americans. And that's, obviously it manifests in this kind of thing. But then on a higher level, you have like the sanctuary cities and stuff like that. It's kind of crazy. Imagine trying to explain that to the founding fathers. I know that's like a common sort of topic of discussion, is it? Like, what would George Washington make of this? But really, like, what would he make of this? It's absolutely insane.
It's kind of surprising that the reporter for ABC News would have used the word kidnapping. And they seem to be lost in that. And then we have a little clip here too, and it seems what some journalists focus on, journalists, reporters, or whatever you want. And here's a question here to Pete Hegseth.
Why not acknowledge the female pilots that also participated in this mission? The early messages that you sent out only congratulated the boys.
So when I say something like our boys and bombers, see, this is the kind of thing the press does, right? Of course, the chairman mentioned a female bomber pilot. That's fantastic. She's fantastic. She's a hero. I want more female bomber pilots. I hope the men and women of our country sign up to do such brave and audacious things. But when you spin it as, because I say our boys and bombers as a common phrase, I'll keep saying things like that, whether they're men or women. I'm very proud of that female pilot, just like I'm very proud of those male pilots. And I don't care if it's a male or a female in that cockpit, and the American people don't care. But it's the obsession with race and gender in this department that's changed priorities. We don't do that anymore. We don't play your little games. Yes,
so
right there.
You know for certain that the uranium was removed from the facility before.
So there's another faux pas in there. He said the word cockpit, and I'm sure that shouldn't be allowed as well.
It's a feeble line of questioning, isn't it? When you've got the guy, the deal, the defense. What do they call him? Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
That's basically like number 3 or something like that in the American system. Like an extremely powerful person, even though this guy's obviously just a clown that is there because he worships Donald Trump. He doesn't really have any power. But still, theoretically, you've got like a question that you can ask to one of the most powerful people on the planet, kind of like top 20 on Earth, theoretically. And then you ask him a stupid question like that. Just leave the profession, get out of that room, go do something else with your life.
You talk about the use of the English language, because that's common. I mean, I coached girls for, 15 years, 12 years. And, all girls on the bench. And I would say, hey, guys, let's, because it's a term, right? It's not like, and the boy, you know what I mean? It's a term. It's not referencing gender. It's just.
But he could also have responded and said, yes, one of the pilots is female, but how do you know that this female considers herself or themselves to be a girl or a woman? How do you know that? Why are you making that presumption? Don't you think as Secretary of Defense I'd know that? You could do that, obviously, but then I guess you do kind of feed the beasts to an extent when you buy into their nonsense.
Yeah, and it just seems like that's like instead of some questions that really have matter, that's the focus of that journalist. Like, I mean, they likely worked with a major outlet, and that's the question they came up with.
It's a disgrace, and probably that same outlet, you can almost say for certain that same outlet will have run thousands of articles about the disaster of misinformation and how people like Joe Rogan have got all this influence and they're not serious, they're not real journalists and all the rest of it. It's like, do you think you're a real journalist? Do you think that's journalism? Do you think people respect you for saying that kind of thing? These people have destroyed their own reputations. They've undermined trust in themselves. And then they sort of cry out in pain and say, why have you done this to me, world? Why have you done this to me, Joe Rogan?
Have you seen the recent kind of apology from Jake Tapper on CNN after they were called out so many times there? And then, they're saying they're trying to justify what they did. And anyway, let's move on.
He's trying to sell books, isn't he? He's not trying to reform himself, I wouldn't say.
Let's move on to BC News. And this ferry thing, I said it earlier that this ferry thing is going to become the biggest scandal for the NDP this year. And it's turning out to get worse and worse and worse. And now it found out that who's to blame? Chrystia Freeland or David Eby, but the Federal Infrastructure Bank provided a $1 billion in financing for the BC Ferry purchase of the new Chinese-made ships. After Freeland sent that letter and said no money should be used, federal money should be used for the building of the ships. And they said, oh, no, it's just the operational stuff. And then Dan Elbis put out this post saying when Carney claimed he was going to spend less, invest more, who knew he was going to spend that money with Chinese state shipbuilding? And that was in a response to Rob Shaw, who said, oh boy, the Crown financing agency that Chrystia Freeland demanded BC Ferries ensure that it's not using to finance the China deal is in effect loaning $1 billion in federal funding for those ships. Now what?
Dan Albas, obviously he's an MP, one of the MPs for Kelowna, so we sort of chat to him a lot. But in this case, this is actually his job, isn't it? He's a transport critic, so quite interesting to get his perspective there. And perhaps we should try and interview him actually, because I think it's of national importance now, as well as local.
I think,
but it's a very interesting question about Chrystia Freeland, because why did she not mention that? Again, you're left with two options: either she was being dishonest and deceptive, or she's stupid and incompetent. Which one is it, Chrystia? And I'm sorry to say, it's not the first time I've asked that question about Chrystia Freeland. I think it's probably about the 10th time. And this Globe and Mail article, is a must-read. It's a must-read for anybody interested in the competence of the elite that runs this country. Or if you're just interested in Canada, you should read this article, because it's damning. This should be like an asteroid smashing into Ottawa, this article. It's a disgrace. They're giving them like a sweetheart deal. So this bank it was created by the federal government. It was created by the federal government to sponsor infrastructure in Canada, to develop Canadian industry and Canadian infrastructure. And it gives you a sweetheart interest rate. So they're getting 1.8%, I believe, somewhere in that article. I think it's 1.8% on this money that they're being given, which is just a crazy low rate. And then they're taking that money and giving it to the Communist Party of China. I mean, it makes you think, like, if you run a small business and you're like strapped for cash, you got a cash flow problem, and you think, all right, I'll have a look at my loans. Probably you're going to be offered like, what, 6% or something like that, maybe, if you're lucky. You're going to have a hard time anyway. So maybe what you should do instead is give money to the Chinese Communist Party and then ask the federal government to give you a sweetheart interest rate of 1.8%, and they probably will.
Well,
so what you've lacked as a businessman out there, perhaps this includes you, Jim, the thing that you haven't done is give money to people that despise Canada and Canada's way of life and seek to destroy the capitalist order, which is literally what the Chinese Communist Party says almost every time they open their mouths. That's what they say. That's how you get it. That's how you get these good loans.
Well, I can tell you what was offered to us when COVID happened, when the federal government said that they were giving, I think it was $4 billion to BDC to in turn loan that out to small businesses across Canada to get through COVID. So I figured I'd get first in line there to make sure that I knew, because, I could get the paperwork in order. So as I was working through all that, answering all their questions and going through all the hoops and that, because we run an agency as well, and we were doing the advertising for the Memorial Cup and then another World Junior event for curling, and all of them said they couldn't pay, that they couldn't pay what they owed, plus the contracts would be canceled. And as I was going through it, this money was proposed by the Liberals to be given to businesses to get through COVID. At the end of it, I was told two things. The interest rate that I was going to get was prime plus 5, I think it was. Prime plus 5. So not 1.8. Prime plus 5. And I asked if I had to secure it with personal assets, and they said absolutely. And I said, thanks for your help, but no thanks. I can't control my business right now. You're controlling it, and you're going to ask me to risk everything for an interest rate that is ridiculous, one, and two, I have no control of what's happening in the business right now, because you guys are calling all the rules, and it's just ridiculous. But yeah, they're letting it 1.8%, awesome deal, and they're giving it to the Chinese government, and they're spending it on Chinese steel, Chinese aluminum, and Chinese jobs.
And Chinese jobs, yeah, but Chinese, oppression of Chinese people as well,
yeah.
and ethnic minorities that live in China, the whole thing. This is such a gigantic disgrace, and the way that they've behaved. Mike Farnworth straight away for the BC government saying, "Oh, nothing to do with me, boss. This isn't my responsibility." David Eby, "Oh, I wish they didn't do this. Plonkers, silly BC Ferries. But it's nothing to do with me, by the way." Even though, even the Globe and Mail has an article, pretty sort of liberal-leaning newspaper, has an article, an editorial saying, "You are the captain of this ship, David Eby." So he's been called out even by people who are generally quite sympathetic to him. Anyway, then we go to Ottawa and we have Chrystia Freeland just saying, like, "Damn, why'd you do this, David Eby? I'm going to write a letter," which doesn't contain the most important information, which is that a joke bank created by Justin Trudeau 6 years ago or whatever it was, sort of, I think it was about 8 years ago even, has given a gigantic loan at a sweetheart rate, which is in effect a subsidy. It's in effect every Canadian taxpayer is paying for this so that they can give money to the Chinese Communist Party. But apparently it's nobody's fault. Nobody's to blame. And it's such a small issue that our glorious, elite, world-beating press that gets to ask questions of Mark Carney every day haven't even bothered to ask him this question. That's how small fry this is. And on we go with Captain Eby leading the way. It's just
so again.
I have to go back to our theme. Why do you think people have lost trust in Canadian institutions? Do you think this might have something to do with it?
Like I said, I think this is going to be one of the biggest scandals for the BC NDP. And it's like that little scab you noticed on your arm there, and you pick at it, and you keep picking at it, and it starts to fester, and it just keeps like bubbling up and more and more and more. And you look there and you think, well, I might have to take the arm off, because this thing is a mess. Like you said, why did Chrystia Freeland send that letter without even realizing, she's, oh, as long as this is for operational stuff, but I still, think it's a bad idea. When, like, I'm sure she was aware, or somebody in her department, one of her many, many assistants that carry her bags around, could have told her that we also lent them $1 billion.
I'm glad you're sure, because I'm not sure. That's how low my estimation is of these people. I'm not sure that that's the case. I'm really not, because they're going to publish this today. The bank, according to the Globe and Mail. The Globe and Mail have got in there ahead of it. I guess somebody's probably given them a document or something, but they're going to come out in public and talk about this today, if the Globe and Mail's right. So, it was there. It was out and about. I don't think Chrystia Freeland would have thought like, I've got a plan here. I'll just not refer to this. I get the feeling that maybe she just didn't know, and that's how incompetent she actually is, which is so much more scary than the alternative, which is that she's like, she's trying to be the puppet master. She's trying to be deceptive and sneaky, because that implies intelligence, doesn't it? Of some degree, if it sort of unethical intelligence. But I think there's a real possibility that she just didn't know.
Yeah, but David Eby would know.
What the hell do we do then?
David Eby would have known where they got the money.
When he was on his high horse saying like, it's none of your business.
Yeah, what did he say? Stay out of, to get out of our business or something. Not your business.
Yeah, because his argument was, I'd love to have the same relationship that Ottawa has with Ferries in the Maritimes, because you give them loads of money.
Turns out,
like $1 billion in a sweetheart loan from a government-owned bank.
And then, so this is David Eby. He's got a lot of pots on the stove that are actually boiling over. I mean, they're frothing over healthcare, drug crisis, this BC Ferry thing, and this is what he's focusing on. Let's just listen in on this little clip here.
This is a party that has spoken out against the province's actions to respond to Donald Trump's attacks on our economy, that has brought in far-right YouTubers into our legislature and anti-choice organizations into the legislature. This is a group of people that includes climate deniers, residential schools deniers. The far-right politics of this group are extreme, and no matter who is leading them, they're going to face significant challenges. I think the contrast is pretty stark for British Columbians. If they want stability, if they want government that is committed to their priorities and delivering for them, whether it's growing the economy or strong public services or safe communities, if they want a group of politicians that are not continually attacking each other and making criminal allegations against each other, then obviously it's the BC NDP that they should be looking to for that. The contrast is quite stark, and we're going to stay focused on people moving forward.
The brass balls on that man. Hey, how could you do? I couldn't do that. Only a lawyer could lie like that. Do you know what I mean? I just couldn't do it. My body, like my body, the things that I'm not in control of, like my sort of subconscious, wouldn't let me do that. I think I would, like, my legs would shake or something. I couldn't lie like that. When he's talking about growth and stability, and he's saying, talking about all the extremists in the other party. How can you do that? How could you do that? It's like Donald Trump, like, delivering a lecture on the importance of being faithful to your wife or something like that. It's just like, how can you do that?
Are we the YouTubers he's talking about? Who's the YouTubers? Like, is it basically saying he wants friendlier press, or what is he saying?
I think he's saying that he's brought them into the party, because I think some of the BC Conservatives, like, wasn't that Angelo guy? Didn't he do a YouTube thing?
Aaron Gunn.
But he's not an MLA, is he? He just works for the party.
I think Aaron Gunn did that BC is dying video.
That's federal. He's a federal Conservative, though. Not
Andrew Lawton, then.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe, but I mean, for God's sake, mate, have a look at your own party. Have a look at that woman who stood up, what was it, a month ago, and started talking about how everybody's a settler and a colonialist and all the rest of it, and basically just divided the province into evil white people and Indigenous people. Obviously, this goes over David Eby's head, but I hate to inform you, Dave, that's an extremist. That's a lunatic. That's a far left extremist. That's not. You're not in a position to start throwing darts at the other guy for being extreme. Your party is full of these nutters. Your party's full of people that hounded one of your MLAs, one of your ministers, because she made a very innocuous comment about Israel. And she was harassed, faced anti-Semitic harassment. Like, come on. But I mean, that's one thing. Whatever. That's the kind of trash talk you expect from low-grade politicians or low-grade people in politics. But what's really bad of him to have done, I think, is to talk about growth and stability. The BC NDP has provided neither of those things. That's why you nearly lost an election. That's why you have your job by, a cat's whisker. That's how you came very close to being fired by the people, because you failed to provide stability and economic growth.
And then this is Harman Bangu putting out this response here. Families are being driven out, ER waits, and this is the big one. ER waits are 10 plus hours, violent crime is out of control, and your government is handing out cartoon guides teaching kids how to use drugs. And I'd say that the bigger problem in many of that is, where's the investment in British Columbia, and where's the tapping of our resources for this wartime effort? Where's the access to the coastline? Where's all this? Where's forestry used to be number one in British Columbia, forestry and mining in 1 and 2 spots, and 20 years to get a mine going. Yeah, I don't know. And then Dan Ashton,
it's all mostly economic, isn't it? But there are some cultural problems, and definitely the health. I don't know what he's going on about this cartoon guides how to use drugs. Is he talking about the thing that we were looking at yesterday? I mean, that's just like that's a distraction, really, isn't it? And that isn't his fault. That's one of the small number of things that you can't blame on David Eby, I think. That's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
But I mean, a better thing to do, since your name is Harman Bangu, for example, something that he could have said is, do you know what far right means? That means ethno-nationalism. What is ethno-nationalist about the BC Conservative Party? Asks Harman Bangu, MLA for the BC Conservative Party. That might have been a wiser line of attack, or perhaps bring up the anti-Semitism scandal within the NDP, because that is something associated with ethno-nationalism.
And then Dan Ashton, former politician as well. British Columbians are not asking for a political attack on your opponents. They want ER rooms that are not constantly closing. A KGH, a pediatric ward they can depend on, actual doctors in primary care. And anyway, so I mean, that's again a local politician here that is highlighting some of those issues. And then John Rustad is actually, he just posted this poll, which means nothing at this point because there's no election right now. But the Conservatives are gaining favor. And like I said, I think this BC NDP thing for the ferry thing is going to blow up in their faces. It's getting worse and worse. Like every time they scratch another piece on this, it just gets like there's more exposed. And you can say that article is going to come out, and that's probably going to cause Mark Carney to respond at some point. Somebody's going to ask him the question.
Yeah, and then we'll not get an answer, but we'll have English words. Maybe some French words as well, but we won't get an answer. Yeah, there'll be some of this. I would say, just on this Rustad thing, I'm not sure about these proportions, mate. 44-41. Look how much smaller 41 is. And then on the other side, 35-43. It's the same proportions. You want to sort out your bar charts, I think, Rustad. Get your bar chart department to wisen up, I think.
Well, I think one image is stretched. You can see John Rustad looks taller there, and then David Eby, the tall guy, is actually two-ished.
Yeah, it's a bit cheeky. And I mean, another comment I'd make, you're saying that this doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't realistically, but this NDP government is weak. It could fall. I think the prospect that it'll fall before its natural life comes to an end is pretty high. And so to them, to the Rustads of the world, this probably means quite a lot. They're probably quite excited about this because they probably expect an election at some point.
And one of the things that the NDP has really been, that's been their kind of MO, is to kind of pick words out and then just kind of like label people. And in this case here, he's pulling out that anti-vax stuff, and then says, the Eby says the measles spike across Canada is a result of anti-vax recklessness. And I've heard from lots of people saying it has more to do with immigration policies, where measles was basically eradicated here in North America, but it was brought in with all the immigrants where they weren't vaccinating in Africa and stuff like that. But he's saying it's anti-vax recklessness.
That's the thing, though, anti-vax. It's another thing when people talk about anti-gay or like homophobic or whatever, you hear these terms thrown around quite a lot, and you sort of in your like in the imagination of somebody like Justin Trudeau, that'll be, you know, a white dude, a white Canadian dude who's just like, you know, don't like them gays kind of thing. In reality, if you actually look at the social attitude surveys, the people who are most likely to be suspicious of vaccines tend to be of South Asian origin and African origin, as you said. Likewise, homophobia and other kinds of, you know, prejudices. It's often not the kind of people that maybe David Eby thinks it is. You know, it's much more complicated than he seems to think. But that's just David Eby. You know, he was quite sort of. I thought he was quite smart and quite sensible when he first sort of inherited the job. But I think once he realized that, you know, he wasn't very popular, not particularly popular, and he was kind of fighting for his political life a lot, he started to use these terms a lot more, and he started to use this kind of politics a lot more. Like during the election, and when John Rustad came on the scene, it was all about like far right and racism and all this kind of thing, and all these like terms, all these labels, as you were saying. It's kind of sad because obviously he sees that as his like meal ticket, doesn't he? He says like, that's how I keep my job, is I throw out these terms, and that's quite sad, isn't it? Really.
Trump is his new one, anti-vax, that they've used forever, and then Trump is another one, and then again, Health Canada says, like I said, it's been eliminated in our country since 1998, and it's really come because of the immigration, the out of, you know, the record immigration and from areas that didn't vaccinate, and then here you are, I guess, labeling, you know, British Columbians and other Canadians as this anti-vax recklessness. No, like nobody was anti-vax for the measles vaccine. Most Canadians got the vaccine. So to start throwing that label around that generated so much hate and divisiveness and between people is irresponsible, I think. And recognize the real source of it.
Just then, he was using that some more like ridiculous terms, wasn't he? Like climate denier.
Yeah.
What's a climate denier? Is that somebody that doesn't believe that the Earth has a climate? Yeah. And what was the other thing he said? Residential school denier. I've never met or heard of a single person in this country that disputes the existence of residential schools.
It's these words that they can pull out, like, you know, Trump supporter, all these things, and it's for that base that. I mean, Mark Carney used it too, for that base that they rely on, and the CBC and CTV parrot this stuff, and there you go. It's a very unfair use of the word anti-vax that just labels a bunch of hate on people when clearly in Canada it was well accepted and most people got their children vaccinated for measles, and it's been eradicated since 1998, and it's only through the immigration policies of the Liberals that this thing is out of control again. So there you go. Let's move on to markets, though. A new king in the market now. Nvidia takes over top spot at $3.7 trillion. The stock surges an all-time high, up 63% since April. You know, it was just not too long ago that they were saying, you know, when DeepSeek was released, that was the end of Nvidia. So when you're watching all these stock shows and like CNBC and that, you know, we did that yesterday with Bitcoin, where they did the funeral for Bitcoin, and they were trying to do a funeral for Nvidia just recently and said that, you don't need Nvidia chips. DeepSeek did it. Turns out DeepSeek got access to some Nvidia chips there. So, and then if you're looking at this though, in the top companies, like, let's just tell me if you see any Canadian companies in this. Ready? Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta. Meta's suffering because of the Canadian news boycott, right? They're really suffering, right? Meta's this wishing that they would do a deal with Justin Trudeau's Liberals and Mark Carney's Liberals. Broadcom, Tesla, Berkshire Hathaway, and Taiwan Semiconductor.
Yeah, I don't see us there.
All of those.
I'm sure a lot of Canadians work for Apple and Amazon. Maybe that's our claim.
The markets are.
And there's a Microsoft building in Ottawa, actually. So I guess there you go. That's the claim.
The markets are up today, and gold obviously, like I said, when the markets are doing well and, like some of the geopolitical situations calm, cool a bit, gold has, like basically flat a little bit off. And then we do have a Bitcoin thing there. Michael Saylor, like they would call him the poster boy for Bitcoin. And he says Bitcoin has been recognized as a reserve asset by the U.S. housing system, a defining moment for institutional Bitcoin adoption. Like I said, we've been saying this for how long? We've been doing this 5-6 months, that the wind is in the sails of Bitcoin. The wind is clearly in the sails. When Donald Trump won, there was that huge spike in Bitcoin. And right now today, Bitcoin over $107,000 American. And again, if the market's cool, or the fears in the markets cool down, you're going to see the stock market rally, and likely Bitcoin will go with it, and gold will cool a bit, right? And then here in Canada, the Financial Post is putting out the jobless rate to hit 7.3. That would be really, really bad in Canada. But tough time.
It would be good for certain unscrupulous employers that might want to lowball people on salaries, but it sucks for the overall economy, doesn't it?
Tough for the young people. And then, the Canada's put out something that they want to keep immigration still at higher levels. So I don't know. And then BC mall owner there lays out a plan, but landlord's not convinced. Like Cadillac Fairview, not really convinced that she has the experience to go into these malls. And that BC billionaire, Ruby Lee, is trying to say she does. But Cadillac Fairview is saying, well, it supports her goal of creating retail jobs in Canada. They feel that ambition would be much better served if other professional landlords could proceed with securing established retailers with proven track records to occupy these former, because the Hudson Bay was like one of those anchor tenants. Like they have the anchors at each end of these malls, and I guess they're saying that they're don't want to move somebody in and then maybe have a tough time moving them out as well. So
it's very messy, isn't it? This business.
It's what's even worse on this whole thing is that how that's Canada's oldest retailer, Hudson Bay. Is established way before the Hudson Bay Trading Company, way before Canada, 1653, I believe. And now everybody's just picking at the carcass of it. And what did the Liberals do for that? They fund everything else, but the Hudson Bay can go and just be picked at like a carcass, right?
It's quite an interesting metaphor, isn't it? This carcass being picked over by, I think she's from Hong Kong, isn't she? Hong Kong-born billionaire who wants to, I don't know what exactly she wants to do. She hasn't quite revealed, has she? But I think she's mentioned that she wants to make it look more like Chinese malls, I think, hasn't she? Where it's like the everything malls, I think they call them.
And then let's move on to our technology section. And here is some, this is a guy I follow a lot, Chamath here. And sorry, this is not Chamath. It is. Let's just play this little clip from Chamath here.
Is who wins the AI prize 5 years from now? Chamath, who's your number one and number two?
Tesla's one and Google's two. And the reason is because they are the closest to having that vertically integrated stack that I spoke about. I think that Tesla has the best vision models. Now with XAI, they'll have one of the best LLMs and reasoning models, and they'll be able to eventually stick that on Dojo. And then all of that will be in all of the physical AI that you will interact with in your daily life, whether it's a robot or whether it's a car or whether it's a robotaxi. So that's number one. And then number two, for many of the same reasons, I think Google, because you'll have the Gemini family of models, which just absolutely kick ass. Like VO3, which we haven't really spoke about, is going to destroy Hollywood in the next year. Like Hollywood is done, I think. But they're landing model after model. They have the TPU, and the next generation TPU, I think, is exceptional. They're baking quantum, and then they have an entire funnel of billions of people that they can direct experiences to. So Tesla 1, Google 2.
Bullish.
Bullish. Well, I mean,
is Hollywood dead though? That's another subject entirely, isn't it? I don't know if it is. Seems a bit of a stretch.
I thought it was dead a long time ago with all of its, every time they decided on who to vote for in the election.
Well, it depends what you mean by Hollywood, I guess, doesn't it? Should have been more specific there. Like the current system, yeah, I can believe that, if that's what you mean by Hollywood. But if you mean by Hollywood, kind of like
I think
the production,
stardom,
yeah.
Every time they decide that they're going to venture outside of their thing and talk about how, you know, how they know better, I'm just like, I don't even want to watch your movies anymore. Like, I'm not interested in your nonsense. So I'm not, I don't watch a lot. I mean, I would recommend to people, I mean, I don't watch a lot of TV anymore. I watch YouTube. I try to learn from YouTube. I watch a lot of people on YouTube. I watch a lot of things. I mean, you and I both consume a lot of news. I mean, the two platforms I spend time on are X and YouTube. X is like great for news, and YouTube is great for learning and understanding. And I don't spend a lot of time on the other nonsensical platforms, and I surely don't spend a lot of time wasting the day on Netflix, power binging on an episode or whatever it is that they have on there.
Yeah, I don't know how it's for really. A lot. Last time I looked at Netflix, it was like loads of reality TV. That seems to be what they've moved into now.
And here's a question for the people that are watching us on a regular: who's still paying for cable? Who's paying for cable? Is anybody still paying for cable? And if you are do you also have a landline? Just a question. Here's something. Tesla's, I think, in a couple of days, in 3 days, we're going to play this small clip here, is set to deliver right off the factory floor. The car's going to come to your house by itself.
Wow.
That's good. There you go. So that'll eliminate the delivery costs, right? It'll actually just drive off the floor and drive to your house. That'll be a first, eh?
It's pretty cool, isn't it?
Pretty wild. I mean, one of the things, if you watch us regularly, you don't need to watch a lot of TV because we kind of do news a little bit different for sure. We try to give you a lot and talk about it in the technology. Hopefully you learn some stuff too. And we talk about technology, health, the markets and that, and kind of give you a different perspective. And yeah, so, and Apple is considering buying, like Apple, the dumbest of the bunch, because their Apple Intelligence is an oxymoron. Sounds like, what's that? The Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act that didn't really reduce inflation. But they're looking at buying Perplexity for $14 billion. These startups, right? $14 billion.
I'm almost inclined to say that's like less than I would have expected it to go for. Because that's one of the big boys, isn't it? Perplexity.
That's not very old though. It's been around for a hot minute. Okay. And then CEO, and this is the big one here. There's a lot of CEOs out there warning, and a lot of them are trying to couch this thought, but a lot of them are saying leaders from major companies, including Amazon and IBM, have indicated that AI will significantly transform and eliminate many jobs in the coming years. So, yeah, this is a major concern for a lot of industries right now. And a lot of them, if you're working in front of a computer, an accountant like myself, lawyers, and that. And I saw a piece there on lawyers. You know, like where typically, you know, like some agreements on buying Perplexity and stuff like that, you know, it would take a team of lawyers days and weeks and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you know, like AI can likely write up that contract for a lot less. Anyway.
Absolutely.
And you and I talk about this all the time, and I'm sure everybody that watches the show knows energy is everything. It's absolutely all about energy. And here's another deal that Inven Energy is going to provide Meta with 800 megawatts. And this is a solar farm. But I mean, these AI giants are looking for energy wherever they can find it. You're on the next slide, but that's okay. We can go to that next slide. But energy is everywhere. And here's Palantir as well. Palantir is a company, if you don't know who Palantir is, it's likely going to make that top 10 very, very soon. Palantir is all about AI, and it's one of the leading companies there. Alex Karp runs it. It is a leading provider, enterprise operating system. It also does a lot of work for the military. So they're partnering with nuclear energy to scale nuclear deployment. Again, energy. Who would have thought? It's all about energy. What does Canada have? A lot of
bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy, you're right. Bureaucracy that buries the energy 6 feet deep. Buries
If only
the
we
energy.
could harness that bureaucratic energy and
There is a
make
way.
something productive with it.
There you go. So energy. And then health. In health, hundreds of people in the UK have reported problems with their pancreas linked to the taking those weight loss and diabetes injections. Imagine that, hey? Imagine that, taking that magic shot that'll help you with your weight loss, and then there's some side effects. Instead of like doing the old-fashioned way of eating properly and exercising.
But also, like, the PR for these drugs has been insane, hasn't it? The last couple of years, they've been spoken of as
miracle drugs,
like an absolute panacea, like a wonder drug that's going to extend people's lives and cure cancer and have all these like glorious side effects. Coincidentally, the industry that manufactures this drug makes ungodly sums of money from it and likes to spend lots of money with the media. I'm sure it's a coincidence that those two things are true, but here we are. A big study. This one's in the UK, but I'm sure it's going to be elsewhere as well, based on the idea that lots of people have been reporting acute pancreatitis as a consequence of using it. I mean, it's early days. They need to actually find out what the truth is, but I just find it so strange because when this first burst onto the scene, immediately the first thing I said is, I wonder what the side effects are. I wonder what the problems are going to be associated with it, because that's kind of like a law of the universe, isn't it? You don't get something for nothing, and that's kind of what this is, isn't it? It's kind of like, oh, I just put this in here, and then all of a sudden I'm fit as a fiddle. It's like that's just not how things tend to work in the reality that we exist in. Usually there's a sacrifice, so maybe it's this.
Here's your big takeaway for today's show, something to learn on. I went to a longevity conference in California just recently with Peter Diamandis was one of the speakers there. And 90% of your longevity health comes from three things: nutrition, what you eat, exercise, and sleep. 90%. So it doesn't come from these magic shots and all these other like therapies and that. It's simple stuff. Eat better, exercise, and then just sleep properly. And I've lost, I don't know, 60 pounds, 65 pounds, like 7 years ago, kept it off just by eating better and gained muscle mass in those 5-6 years. And as a person of my age, just by eating better and exercise. I exercise 7 days a week. That's the investment you have to make. A sick person has one dream, and a well person has many dreams. But the sick person just wants to get better. And then the sad thing is that these magic elixirs tempt you to think that there is a shortcut. And just like if you want to have a better life, it usually relates to hard work, and I know a lot of people look for that shortcut as well. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a law of nature.
Yeah, and then it's another one you put in here: scientists to build artificial human DNA from scratch. And there you go. That won't end badly. Scientists have now become a controversial project to create artificial human DNA from scratch. The idea is long faced opposition on ethical grounds, but health charity, the Wellcome Trust, which is based in London, said it has potential to do more good than harm. Famous last words, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're a gigantic beast. The Wellcome Trust. They're one of the biggest non-profits in the world, I think, in terms of their endowment. So for them to get involved is, almost certainly something will happen here. But it is scary. I mean, they're saying the ethical opposition to it was always about like designer babies and things like that. The idea that people were just going to say, all right, I want them to be 6'5", blue eyes. I want them to have all the rest of it, and manufacture a baby, 200 IQ. And then now they're saying, oh no, we'll do it because it'll do more good than harm. But I'm sure in the hands of other people, if this technology gets out there, they're obviously going to do designer babies, aren't they? If you've got an option to design your baby so it's exceedingly intelligent or something like that, you're probably going to do it, aren't you?
Here's my question: are you going to trust these people that can't even spell welcome?
It is a funny one, that, isn't it? I don't know what. I actually don't know why they do that. Maybe it's a name. Maybe
anyway.
the guy is called Mr. Welcome.
There you go. And then this is one, and then I switched from the big tubs of margarine because it was cheaper to butter, and butter is supposed to be good for you. And here's a doctor here saying good for the heart, good for diabetics, good for those wanting to lose weight instead of that Ozempic. Helps lower inflammation, good for the brain. And I'm a big fan of the butter. Big fan of the butter.
Just on taste grounds, I would say, butter's your boy.
Yeah, when we got
oil-derived margarine and stuff like that, it just tastes a bit off, doesn't it?
Well, it's like one chemical away from plastic or something like that. But yeah, and butter's really good. I mean, to me, a good meal is a bowl of borscht and a hot steamy bread in a big slab of butter. There you go. And put the butter in the borscht.
Borscht.
There you go.
What about goulash? That's what you should eat to
Hungarian
be true
goulash,
to your roots.
There you go. And then here's another message for people. The cheapest meat in the market is still better for you than the most expensive cereal and bread. Imagine that. And that's
lots of anti-bread messaging out there these days.
And that CTV article just recently, remember they said that you don't need to eat protein, just eat. As long as you're not starving, you're fine.
Just eat cress.
Yeah. And then here's a deal that a highly anticipated IKEA deal doesn't include Canada. There you go. So Canada doesn't get the free kids meals 5 days a week, not offered in Canada.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
I had a family dinner at IKEA the other day, and it was pretty great. It's probably the best thing about IKEA, I would say. So no wonder people are upset.
Me and this lawyer used to trade dinners with each other and stuff like that. And we had a big dinner, and as a joke, I took him to IKEA, and I says, "You can order as much as you want. You knock yourself out."
To be honest, though, I bet he wasn't disappointed because it is good, isn't it?
It's decent. It's decent food for sure, but it's dirt cheap. Like if you're looking for a place to take a family, I mean, IKEA is dirt cheap. It's almost like Costco dirt cheap. Except don't eat their hot dogs. I think they're $2 for $1 or something like that. But I don't know, that hot dog meat there is kind of mystery meat, I think.
It does feel a little bit synthetic, doesn't it? Like it was invented by the Wellcome Trust.
I think the Costco kicks it with, I was going to say something else, but kicks it with their $1.50 hot dog and a drink. And I just get the soda water and the hot dog. But for $1.50, can't be beat, I don't think. But let's get into our Are You Serious section? And don't forget, we got the Fool of the Day to pick out of there too. And I know that you probably got a front runner going right now. But here's the first one in the Fool of the Day. Or sorry, the Are You Serious? And here's David Eby pointing at Freeland and Freeland pointing back at Eby. But I think this thing is going to have a lot of people to blame here at the end of it. And you know who's going to foot the bill?
Where's Mark Carney? Is he in the box? Or is he in the police car? Like, where is he? He should be there. He should be a Spider-Man.
I think the fool in this picture is the taxpayer that are all hiding in the van there.
Yeah.
Getting, and in this, you and I talk about this all the time, and I'm sure people, the regulars on the show, understand this. We talk about because you can substitute Canada for the end when they're America innovates, China replicates, the Ferengi, and Europe and Canada regulate.
What on earth is going on with that woman's dress choice? I'm very, very curious about that. But they set themselves up for these kind of photographs, don't they, the European Union, with that flag, where it almost looks like some kind of 1984 scene or some sort of fascist empire, doesn't it? But it's sad. I mean, it's very sad because the Europeans, like I've said many times, I think I said it yesterday, they obviously have the sort of talent. They've got the brain power to do anything. They could lead the world. They could be far more advanced than the Americans if they really had the attitude. But they don't. They just waste it. That's what makes it so sad.
I watched a clip with Evan Solomon just today. I was going to put it in, but I didn't think it was too mean. Canada, there's one of the universities built an electric car. I can't remember the name of it now. I'm just trying to think back to the name of the car. An electric car, and I think it was like $5 million to build the first car. And then they're going to build 3 more with millions of dollars over the next 3 years to get a fleet of these. And then at some point, they say they're going to start manufacturing them in 5 years. And that's going to be the birthplace of Canada's own automobile market. And I was just like, you have no idea. You have no idea what you're doing.
No.
Best
They
look.
don't sound like they're taking it seriously.
Best look south and look at all the carnage of the EV builders that are laying on the side of the road that had German engineering, Fisker, and a whole bunch of them that are just, and are struggling to make it. The only one that's really doing any good is Tesla, and that's one that gets tariffed here in Canada now. And Rivian, you could argue, is on the edge there of doing something, but they got big money behind them with the Saudis and Jeff Bezos and all that kind of stuff, right? Big money. So anyway, and then this
it's the importance of capital, isn't it? We've talked about that quite a lot, but capital makes a difference. Obviously,
really?
I mean, that's hardly. We're in a capitalist system. It's not exactly a secret. But
really?
Canada's had this disastrous relationship with capital now for so long, and that's one of the reasons why things don't happen here.
Really? Why did Mark Carney, what was one of the reasons he said he moved Brookfield Asset Management to the U.S.?
Access to liquidity. He managed to wrap it up in a sort of slightly obscure term.
He did the thing, right? Just like access, Mr. Burns.
Proximity to liquidity or something.
Hey, didn't Mr. Burns do this all the time when he was plotting? Off the Simpsons?
Yeah, very, and also he's got this kind of posture, hasn't he, Mark Carney? Sometimes. Anyway.
That's also Despicable Me does that all the time too, doesn't he? When he's plotting. There you go. And the mini-me's. And this is for the CNN group out there. Trump could rescue a drowning child from the ocean. Democrats would accuse him of starving the sharks. That's fair.
On the flip side, as Donald Trump himself said, he could shoot someone in Times Square and still be a hero to certain people.
Yeah. He dropped the biggest bomb, too. I was going to put that in here. Trump dropped the biggest bomb, and it wasn't the B-2 bombers that dropped the bomb. It'll be the bomb that's heard around the world for at least a year to come in every meme out there when he said, they don't know.
The S-bomb.
There you go. President Trump, and this is from our friends at the Babylon Bee, President Trump bombed Iran, and then this is the coverage from the outlets out there. New York Times, quiet Middle Eastern country devastated by unprovoked Trump attack. Trump neutralizes Iran nuclear threat. That's from Fox. And New York Post, Ayatollah Yasso, Iran ran out of luck. CNN, Trump cruelly deprives poor Iranian children of nuclear weapon they've always dreamed of. And then MSNBC, Iran is now the George Floyd of the Middle East. Yeah, of course, right? There you go.
It's funny. The next one's the funniest one.
Which one's that there? Reminder next to
the
call.
BBC.
Yeah. There you go. And then Al Jazeera, they just bombed our headquarters. There you go. This is Mario put this out here. Bezos blows 50 million euros on Venice wedding. Like that wedding is really getting a lot of press out there. And Jeff Bezos sparing no cash. Like he's very quiet in the media though, other than like he's very enamored by his wife there. So that's great. Spends most of his time with her.
Yeah.
He's getting a lot of grief for what he did in Venice there though. But I guess he gave the local organizations 3 million euros and said, hey, let's keep this party going.
He's just, they should be familiar with that kind of thing in Venice from the Middle Ages. He's just a noble bribing the church, basically, at this point, isn't he?
I thought we were done, but we got more. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party of Canada. Name one thing that's wrecked more lives than cigarettes. There you go. And then this meme supposedly, or this clip is supposedly a lot of young people playing this clip. And I thought, well, let's play it. Their old friend Stephen Harper from back in the days. Let's play this clip, and we'll call it there. We'll let Stephen Harper take us out for the day. There you go.
Mr. Speaker, the highest principle of Canadian democracy is that if you want to be Prime Minister, you get your mandate from the Canadian people, not from this deal that the leader of the Liberal Party has made with the separatists is a betrayal of the voters of this country, a betrayal of the best interests of our economy, a betrayal of the best interests of our country, and we will fight it with every means.
That's good. There you go. Bring back
Steve
Harper.
with a bit of dance music.
Bring back Harper is a lot of stuff going on social media, but I don't know. I think Stephen Harper is happy doing his own job there in Calgary. He's working for the Alberta Pension Fund, I think.
And doing the old speaking tour where he gets in quite a nice penny.
There you go. This is all Stephen Harper's fault.
Well, that is literally the argument of many Liberal Party ministers, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, that's our show for today. It's Thursday, June 26th. We're back tomorrow. Fool of the day. Fool of the day.
Well, we'll get it over with quickly. David Eby, obviously. How could it be anybody else?
That would have been my guess too. There you go. And we do thank everybody that watches us on a regular basis. It's great. And then some people say they don't even have data on their phones. There you go. But there you go. Gave up on television in 2009. Yeah, I don't know. So there you go. Stop watching Netflix. Stop watching cable. Cut your cable off. Watch us. Right?
Do it.
Do it. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. Friday, June 27th. We'll be here at 9 a.m. Cheers.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence.